Hey, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. I guess that's a quote from The Truman Show. Whatever time of day you are watching this episode of Beyond the Scoreboard, thank you so much for joining us today. We are thrilled to have two incredible women with us on the show today. They are both from Parity. We're going to give you some links and ways to follow them a little bit later, but I'm pleased to introduce you to Risa Isard. She is the Director of Research and Insights at Parity, as well as Alana Kasner, the SVP of Business Development and Athlete Relations at Parity. I'm going to let them tell you what all of that means, but we're super thrilled to have you here today, guys.
All right. Well, Amy, thank you for having us today. My name is Alana Kasner. As you said, my role is SVP of Business Development and Athlete Relations at Parity. Parity was founded in 2020 with a mission to close the gender income and opportunity gap in the professional sports world. As I'm sure most people know, men's sports has been owning the majority of coverage, media, conversation, all of that for many, many years, as well as most of the sponsorship income. And we saw opportunity and a place that we could really jump in and help, primarily because these women are phenomenal that we work with, and there was so much opportunity to provide them with more. We work with almost over 1,200 pro women athletes these days across 80 plus sports. It gets pretty niche when you look at the Winter and Summer Olympic and Paralympic Games in terms of the numbers of sports that we kind of help serve. We want to do everything we can to financially empower these women, and sometimes the opportunities are brand sponsorship deals, and sometimes it's more. And so we work with these women in a variety of ways in terms of helping move the whole movement forward. So my background is in content and sports and athlete storytelling and brand partnerships and the like. And so Parity was the perfect home for me. But it's been really cool to see how we've been able to work across really large brands, Microsoft, Morgan Stanley, Advent Health, Nulo, Ipsy, and more, and bring a ton of really cool brand activations to life with these pro athletes.
I love it.
Awesome. Thanks for introducing Parity, Alana. My name's Risa Isard. I'm the Director of Research and Insights at Parity. I'm much newer to Parity than Alana is. Alana is actually the longest tenured employee at Parity, and I am one of the newest. I started at Parity this summer. I've been here for a little bit more than 2 months now. And my role at Parity is really to think about how can our data and insights advance the entire women's sports ecosystem, really add value kind of to all partners and stakeholders across that. Also, how can our data and insights particularly add unique value to our prospective and current clients and brand partners that we work with. And ultimately, right, all of that is always in service, as Alana said, of putting more money in the pockets of women athletes. And so how can our data and insights drive dollars, drive brand deals, drive opportunities for women athletes, help them just even know their worth so that they can negotiate for themselves great deals. And so I'm super excited to be putting my research chops to use at Parity. My background in the sport industry has been both like winding and purposeful. So the through line to my entire career has been thinking about the intersection of sport and social change, really always with a bend towards women's sports, towards LGBTQ plus folks, and thinking about like, how are we using sports for social change? I kind of attribute a lot of that to being a WNBA fan in the earliest years of the league. And so seeing up close and personal as a girl athlete growing up in Phoenix, Arizona, surrounded by the energy that launched the W, the longest, most successful women's sports team sport league that we have in our country's history, right? Like, and seeing up close and personal the power of women athletes, and also seeing all of the disparities they were facing, right? All of the disrespect that they faced, all of the money they weren't making, all of the media coverage they weren't getting. And so that duality has just really driven me. It led me to design my own major in undergrad called Social Change at the Intersection of Culture, Gender, and Sports. And kind of on and on from there, think about where are the different places where I can use sport for social change. So super, super stoked to be doing that through my role at Parity, blending that research with all the other experience and passion.
Thank you, Risa. The work that you both, Alana and Risa, are doing at Parity is so important culturally, economically, from a justice perspective. It intersects so many different issues, I think, that are top of mind right now. I'm curious, Alana, so you've been there for 5 years. You've seen the evolution of Parity. Was there a moment or a spark that said, oh, we're doing this work to bring equal pay for women, to give them more of these marketing sponsorships, connect them with brands? Was there a pivot that said, oh, you know what, this is one piece of the puzzle. We also need the research to then substantiate this. How did that evolve?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the biggest factor for us was in the original stages of Parity, the conversations that we were having with brands was more around like convincing them of the value of working with these women, right? And so like 2020, 2021, those were the conversations, right? And I was banging my head against the wall. Like, I literally don't understand why we're still having these conversations in 2020 and 2021. And you'd get the occasional man who would be like, well, I have a daughter, so now I care. And I was like, cool, I'm glad your daughter loves sports, but also there's a lot of other reasons that you should really care about what's going on here. And I think over time, what we really saw happen was, right, like the brands, it went from this is a good business investment, like you really should understand why and what's going on here, to all of these brands were like, hey, we really want to get involved, but we don't know what that looks like for us, right? And what we as a company realized was like, there was a lot of stories to be told out there through the data, through the analytics that would help these brands understand how they could best spend their dollars in the space that would be right for them, right? And not only would they be supporting the entire movement of women's sports, they could be supporting the athletes, the teams, the leagues, the orgs, like depending on what the right entry point was for them. But what they really wanted to see was the data to support that. And that was like an immediate and obvious place for us to dive right into. And even before Risa joined the team, we did put a couple of reports out with Philippa Thompson, who was our previous kind of head of data. She was the head of a lot of things, not just data. But because we really saw that like that was starting to move the needle with people, they were understanding a little bit more once they could see some numbers behind it and understand like consumer and fan behavior a little bit more in this space.
Yeah, the recent report, I think the most recent one you guys put out was around soccer fans in the US. That had some pretty interesting stats in it. I know one of the ones that spoke to Cody and I was how important not just the athlete endorsement is in terms of moving the needle for a brand, but also that the second most influential thing was cause-based or issue-based initiatives. I guess there's a lot to unpack in that one, but Risa, could you talk a little bit just about like first, what's your process when you're doing this research? Because I think this is fascinating since you do cover so many sports. This one was very specifically geared to soccer. What was the process? And then what were some of the findings that maybe surprised you even?
Yeah, it's a great question. If anything, right, maybe starting with like what surprised you. So, and the story to this research is, so Parity didn't start out or set out for this project or this report to like write a soccer report. In June this year, we released a report called Give the Fans What They Want. And that was an all-encompassing look at the women's sports ecosystem. It was a national survey of nearly 2,400 US adults, many of whom were sports fans, not all of them were. And we were able to cut that data in a lot of different ways to get to kind of a lot of different stories. And one of the stories that was really just obvious in the data was just how special the women's soccer fan base was. And so after we put out like this, here's everything to know about the entire women's sports ecosystem report, we really wanted to give the women's soccer community its flowers and say like there's something really special happening here. And so the process for this report was in part informed by just like what the data was telling us, right? Like what did we see? Where was there a story to be told? And okay, let's dive into that. And so the overarching takeaway from this particular report is that like over and above the amazing, amazing qualities that the women's sports audience has, right? At a baseline, we know that women's sports fans are more engaged, more passionate, more loyal, like all the things. They convert their spending more than men's sports fans do. All of that's true kind of like across the board in women's sports. And then we had the women's soccer audience saying, even above and beyond your average women's sports fan, the women's soccer community is doing that, X times more. And so we really wanted to tell that story. So that's the overarching takeaway is just like how much the the soccer consumer base like over indexes over and above the women's sports audience, which by the way, right, already over indexes over and above the men's sports audience.
Risa, like a question with that. I mean, you mentioned your like your own personal story and growing up with the W as it, kind of grew. Did you see in the data, is there similarities between the space that women's professional soccer is right now with those early days of the W? Like, where are those in terms of the progression towards, equity of investment, equity in pay? Like, where do you see that right now?
Yeah, it's a good question, right? So, I mean, we're not sitting, unfortunately, on data from like 1998 or, 2010 or so of the WNBA to compare women's soccer to the W in that era. But what I think is so special still is, right, like women's basketball is the most watched women's sport. And so there's a lot of kind of highlights for every women's sport. This report should not be taken to mean that like women's soccer is the only worthwhile women's sport or the only women's sport that people are watching, right? Like none of that's true. It's just a particularly kind of unique audience. And I think we can explain that from a few different angles, right? One being that soccer just as a whole, whether you're talking about men's or women's, has a really strong supporter fan base, right? And so teams have very direct connections to their fan base, have these really authentic relationships. And then there's whole communities around it. And some research I did as a professor found just how important that communal experience is to fan consumption and engagement and identity. So like having a whole sport with that built in, I think helps to explain why we see some of this over indexing. I think kind of, and that's like the positive side of things. I also think women's soccer has had some really tough time where players were treated really poorly, right? And in ways that were right, just like absolutely inappropriate. And I think the women's soccer fan base is aware of that. And so when brands stand up for these players, like there's an appreciation for that too. And so just I think some of those reckonings have also created unique relationships between the fans and the athletes and the brands who step up to support those athletes.
A question for both of you, I guess. So you've got this data, and then Alana, you also have a background in storytelling from working at the Players Tribune. How do you merge that data into the storytelling that you as Parity do, both from a standpoint of presenting the case to the brands and then also using what you know to infuse into the actual stories of the athlete partnerships that you're creating?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I mean, as far as how we tell the stories to the brands, I mean, that happens in a lot of different ways. Sometimes it's just conversationally, sometimes it's in materials we prepare for them. I mean, I think one of the things that we're really, really, really good at is really listening and hearing to exactly what a brand is trying to solve for and then reiterating back to them, one, what we heard, but two, how we propose solving it, if that makes sense. And the data is always the pieces of the data are always part of those conversations. How it infuses into the campaigns itself, I think can vary. It could look like working with a particular type of athlete for the particular campaign, right? Depending on exactly what they're trying to solve for and who might be paying attention. And also just, I think that the coolest part about working with pro women athletes and these brand partnerships is like these athletes are everyday people just like us. I mean, I know male athletes are as well, but it just people don't think about them like that, right? And so like a lot of the athletes we work with, like you might run into at your local coffee shop or at your local grocery store or, you know, just living their lives like normal people. And that's also the world they want as well. And so I think there's so much like vulnerability and authenticity in the stories that they want to tell anyway. And the brands are so excited about it. And then when you pair the data into like the why, I think it like all comes together really nicely. I don't know, Risa, if there was anything else you want to add to that, but
I don't think I have too much to add to that. I mean, I think about data analysis as a form of storytelling. I'm always looking at, right, like how do these stats kind of speak to each other? How do they flow? Like what's actually happening here? I think that's one of the most fun parts of my job actually is like not just running numbers, but then like actually just sitting with them and being like, what is this actually telling me? Why does this matter? Why do I think it matters? Okay, that's interesting. But why does a brand gonna think it matters, right? Like that's actually what's important. And why is this brand gonna think it matters? And why is that brand gonna think it matters, right? And like what's the unique story that, to Alana's point, right? Parity is so good at listening to what our brand partners are looking for. And so kind of the why for each of them might be different. And so my job is to figure out like how does the data kind of help each of them, right, craft the right strategy for what they want, even if those are different strategies, right, and even if those are different data points.
Have you seen over the last 5 years in those conversations you're having with brand partners, have you seen any trends in terms of what the story they're trying to tell or what their needs are that has shifted from 2020 to the moment we're in now?
There hasn't been a particular trend other than people just want to get involved with women's sports. Like that's been the biggest overarching theme that's stayed or has like continued to grow and be really consistent. I think each brand is obviously looking for different things, whether it's to reach new audiences, whether it's to promote new products, whether it's they're rebranding themselves and they want to have a whole new kind of persona out there in the landscape. But I think what we've been able to show through our data from, 2022 through now is like the power of the women's sports fan or the fan that pays attention to women's sports or is a fan of women athletes and like how we can connect the brand to that consumer in a really interesting way using these athletes or teams or leagues or orgs or whatnot. And that's been the coolest part of it, right? And to Teresa's point earlier, it's not one size fits all. It's not like we would ever prescribe the exact same thing to every brand. That would never be successful. And so like that is the really fun part of it. And I think also the more we do with certain brands, the more we like flex our brains and our own creativity to be able to solve problems differently for the next partner and the next partner and the next partner, right? And infusing different data or whatnot or stories and all of that. And so like it's continuing to grow. But yeah, I just think the interest and the excitement about getting involved is the thing that's really grown consistently over the last 5 years.
Do you ever have athletes be the ones to initiate them coming to you and say, hey, I want to work on this type of product, or hey, there's an issue space I want to work on. What brands align with that you guys compare me with?
And wish we could help every single one of them all of the time. I mean, I think the thing that people don't realize about us is maybe there's 14 full-time employees now, and we work with a network of, like I said, 1,200 athletes. And so, unfortunately, we can't serve every athlete every single day in that capacity. But I do think we're getting to a place where we have a variety of different athlete resources, where we're always continually trying to engage with the athletes in different ways, where they are growing as individuals as well, plus constantly working on different data and research reports, right, which helps close the gap even more. And we have a robust portfolio of brands that we're continually in conversation with. So I think, yes, 100%, Amy, that does happen. And in those instances, we try to make something happen as much as we can. But again, there's plenty of brands I would want to work with as an individual human. Doesn't mean I'm going to get a brand deal with them. So
no, it's so true.
Yeah.
Can I just add to all that too? I mean, I think especially on the cause piece, one of the things that Parity is known for, and Alana can speak more to this if you want to, right? But like when an athlete partners with Parity, they answer like dozens of questions from us so that we can understand who they are, what drives them, what interests them, right? So that's a time that basically every athlete tells us, like, what do they want and what are they like and who are they? And one of those questions that we ask, right, is like, what causes are most important to you? Because we know that those are opportunities that many athletes want to be part of. We know that those are opportunities that many brands want to be part of. We know how effective that cause partnership, particularly with an athlete, can be. And so that is a data point we have on virtually every athlete who works with Parity brands. And so where we can too, like that's an opportunity for us to match athletes.
Are brands typically responsive to partnerships that do include a cause angle? Like, do they understand the benefit of working in the social impact piece? How do those conversations go?
Yes, it's a yes and question, right? So like, yes. And there are sometimes other external factors that we can't control that would like skew them away from that, right? In certain climates and whatnot. And we don't need to get into all that. But I would say that for the most part, the brands that really want to dive into working with these women are already taking up a lot of space in cause-based marketing in some way, shape, or form, or social impact, and they care. And because of that, it all kind of comes together really nicely. And it's like less conversations around like why and why that's important and all that. And I mean, I think back to what Risa said a little earlier, like, right, like I was 12 when the WNBA launched, right, in 1997. Like I was that kid going to the first games at Madison Square Garden when the Liberty played, like the Sparks came and the Comets came and all that. And like you could see how awesome it was, but you could also see everything that the Knicks were getting that the Liberty weren't, right, in my world. And I think that the cool thing about women sports fans, and I don't think we've ever surveyed on this, so don't quote me on this being fully true, is like, but the things that these athletes care about, their fans care about, right? And that's the thing that the brands understand. And so it's like, it's not just working with a few athletes on a cause-based marketing. It's like the reach beyond that is what they really know will be impactful. And so I think it's not really a sell, right? Like if they already understand the value to that piece of it, I just think some brands are more willing to like lean 100% in there and others are like, let me lean 50% in there, right? Which it is kind of what it is these days, but yeah.
Parity's mission, just to bring it back, is to close the gender, income, and opportunity gap in pro sports. And so any partnership that's happening with Parity, right, is kind of implicitly like a cause campaign of some kind, right? We are not a nonprofit. We are a for-profit business, right? Our athletes are trying to make money. Brands are trying to sell things, but they're doing that with women athletes. That's a big deal. They're doing that sometimes with queer women athletes, with Black women athletes, right? Like brands that are partnering with Parity athletes just by virtue of doing business with us and by doing business with them are kind of taking a stand for like who they want to be their product endorsers, who they want to be paying, right? Like where they're putting their brand money in marketing. That doesn't mean that the marketing campaign is going to be holding signs or have, like always a monetary contribution to a foundation at the end, but just by virtue of like who they're helping to build wealth, right? How they're helping to close the gender income and opportunity gap in pro sports. Like I would argue that's a really cool feature that's kind of built into every single thing we do at Parity. And so are there some partnerships that do that and then some? Yes. And are there other partnerships that quote just do that? Like that's still a lot.
Maybe a follow-up question to that, and totally in the weeds question. This is probably Alana for you. Is as the folks that you're talking to on the brand side, are they the sports marketing folks, brand partnership folks? Is it the CSR side of things? Who are the types of people that you're talking to?
It's everyone, and it really depends. I wish I could be like, we always talk to this people, because that would be really easy for our sales team to be like, hey, let me go after this person. No, it's everyone. I mean, it's sports, it's marketing, it's sports marketing. It's, like CSR, it could be a D&I initiative. It could be literally anything. And that's kind of cool because it means there's a lot of different opportunities within the brand landscape to work with athletes, right? And I think one of the cool things that's really come about in the last probably like 2.5 years is brands coming to us to have our athletes go into their organizations as like keynote speakers for different events, right? Because that's like another outlet for the athletes to be able to tell their story, to show up and speak, to align their life themes with exactly whatever the brand is trying to like, infuse into their employees and whatnot. It's just another thing that happens where the brands realize like the impact that this could have on for them, their value, right? Like they want to work with a pro women athlete.
Makes sense. Well, and probably, Risa, to your point, like around the mission of Parity, right? Being able to dive into different budgets probably provides more opportunity too, because it's, all those budgets being siloed into different departments and you get to kind of pull from all of them. Like it just creates more opportunity.
The space that I have been really intrigued by recently is the beauty space and all of the different ways that they're sponsoring teams. They're building facilities for teams, obviously have a lot of individual athlete endorsements. Any thoughts on how that has exploded from what you've been seeing in your research or just even in the partnerships that you've been creating for your athletes?
I'll just say, and then Alana, I'll let you take it. But I think one of the things that has been most exciting to me is to see how beauty brands are letting athletes show up in their full authentic expression, right? So like beauty brands have been present in women's sports for a really long time, but those partnerships historically were often conditioned upon a really feminine appeal, a hypersexualized presentation to the like men and the male gaze, right? And all of these ways that these athletes kind of needed almost to apologize for being athletic and strong and having muscles, right? And beauty brands today are saying like, no, we're here. We want to partner with you and we want to partner with you, not some version of you that we're going to like mandate is a curated, media like picture of you, but we want to partner with you and your authentic self. And that means that you get to show up in this deal kind of however you want to show up. And not every brand is doing it exactly like that. And there are certainly moments where, I think players have even recently kind of said like, well, wait, what about us, right? What about the more butch athletes? What about the pappies, right? As Natasha Cloud said. And then you have stud buds, right? Like coming in and I was like, what? Just in Vogue, I just spent this morning reading their feature, right? That's a really big deal. And so I think for me, that's what's most exciting to see is that explosion in kind of possibility for how women athletes show up in these partnerships.
Yeah, the only thing I'll add, because I was great, is that I think it expands beyond beauty. Like it's majorly into the fashion space. I mean,
Yeah.
I remember even when I was working at the league in 2007 to 2012, like the way the W athletes were told to show up politely, right? Like it is what it is. Times past, very feminine presenting, always have your hair down, even if you never wear it down, like for every marketing appearance, right? And now it's like, please be yourself, right? And so we've seen even brands in the fashion space over the last 5 years, like really lean into letting the athletes like be exactly who they are. And I think fashion, beauty, the more that these kind of companies let the athletes just exist, like the more success they'll see in the long run in terms of like brand affinity and whatnot. So
How do you feel like over the next few years, this is going to keep evolving? Like if you had a crystal ball or just, some sort of magic portal into the future, where do you see the brand sponsorships with women athletes going?
Yeah, I'll go quickly and then Risa, you can go. I mean, I think the things that I see that are great are like I think the big sports will continue to grow. Like I think basketball will continue to grow. I think soccer, as we've seen, will continue to grow. I think tennis, golf will continue to grow. My hope is that wealth spreads across more of the emerging leagues and sports and teams. I mean, we've seen volleyball, we've seen softball, we've seen lacrosse. Like there's just so much happening. And I think the fact that the Olympics will be in our home territory in 2028 is a huge win for the money kind of having an opportunity to flow it down to everybody. But I know the numbers will keep growing, right? And like the fandom has been there, it will continue to be there. So as long as things are visible and continue to get coverage and that media piece keeps growing, like the dollars will come.
Echoing Alana in many respects, I do think all signs point to continued growth. Absolutely right. Like, can we diversify who gets to benefit from that growth? What are the leagues? Can we make sure that Paralympians are, along for the ride in 2028 as we're hosting the Paralympics and the Olympics, right? And I think one of the things I love about Parity is we have Paralympians and right Olympians, and like we have some brand deals that have taken place in Spanish, right? And there's just like a lot of ways I think for brands to authentically engage. And so I hope that that'll continue. I also think we're sitting right now in a time where there's more conversation than ever around pay equity and here for that, right? I mean, Parity, like that's what we do. And so I'm looking forward to seeing how brands continue to be part of that solution and kind of how those conversations also, I hope, right, can permeate from what's happening in athletics to like what's happening across this country. Those are, I think, really important conversation starters, and women athletes deserve to be paid what they're owed. And women across this country do too. And so, where's the intersection of those conversations? I think is something I'm super excited to see unfold yeah, in the coming years.
I will cheers to that. Awesome. All right. Well, then my last question for you is tell us where we can find all of the amazing things that Parity is doing.
I'm really excited about our new research homepage that we just launched a few weeks ago. So it's paritynow.co/women's-sports-research. Or if you just go to the Parity website, paritynow.co, there's a little research tab there. And so it's a great place to find all the data, right? Find the facts, find the receipts for anything you want to know about how fans are engaging, how they think about athletes, how they think about brands, what they want to see, what it means for women athletes too. Like what are the actual economics of being a woman athlete, and why do so many of them make no money from playing their sport, and all of that.
Yeah. And then across the rest of the social world, we're at Parity Now on most channels. And ironically, that's not our company name. It's just Parity. But when we went to make all of our accounts, that was taken. So here we are.
We understand that struggle.
I love
Right.
Parity Now though, Alana, because it's such a strong statement,
It's like a
right? Like
statement.
Parity now, like
It is.
not tomorrow, please, now.
Nah, your handle is basically a giant poster. It's great. Well, Risa, Alana, thank you so much again for being here. This was such a great conversation. I have a feeling we will be asking you back for a part 2 at some point because y'all are fantastic and the work you're doing is needed and wonderful. So we really appreciate it.
Thank you all so much. Thanks for the work you do, and happy to be on anytime.
Yeah. What Risa said.
All right. Thanks y'all so much. We will talk to you again soon.